Hey everybody, it's Chris from Beer Bearings. Welcome back. It's Friday. It's time for another beer of the week. Last week we did a pretty easy drinking IPA from right here in town. This week I'm going to change it up just a little bit and talk about a raspberry Berliner Weiss from Trim Tab Brewing in Birmingham, Alabama. It's called Paradise Now, the beer is, and that's what we're going to talk about. We've talked about sours and Berliner Weisses before, and I'm going to give this one an open and a sniff and taste it and tell you what I think. So it's a raspberry Berliner Weiss, so I expect it to bear that raspberry color. And lo and behold, there it is. You also will notice that there's a pretty nice persistent head on here, which is totally expected. These are wheat-based beers. And it's going to have that nice foam. It's going to stick around a little bit. Really bready, nice kind of lactic acid. This is a little different from the somewhat sharper lactic acid aroma you usually get, so that's interesting. And that raspberry is right in there too. That's really refreshing and really balanced. That is really good, guys. Congratulations. So this one is a GABF medalist, and I can see why. Trim Tab is new to the New Orleans market. They just started down here less than a month ago. You can get their products at 504 Craft Beer Reserve. I happen to know that because that's where I got this. Maybe other places as well. And really happy to have them in the market. That's a really nicely balanced sour. That's my big dog, Adi. She's afraid of thunder, which is possibly what's going on right now. She normally won't come anywhere out here while this is going on. So there she goes. So this is really well balanced. A lot of times when you get a Berliner, you get either one that's got a lot of lactic acid, so it's very tart, and it's a little bit almost too tart over the top. That is not this one. So if you don't think you like tart beers, if you don't think you like Berliner Weiss, this might be one for you to go and check out. So again, 504 Craft Beer Lab. If you're in New Orleans, if you're in Alabama, I'd be willing to bet you can find it even more easily than that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how beers get sour. I know we've talked about it before. We've talked about what's called kettle souring, where the brewer makes the wort, which again is kind of the sweet tea concoction. They will mix hot water with grains, in this case wheat and barley and some other things as well, to create a wort, W-O-R-T. Think of it as brewing a tea for the most part. It's very similar to that. It's also going to extract a lot of sugar from the grain when that mash process happens. That's what that process is called, mash or mashing. And the brewer in a kettle sour is going to introduce lactobacillus into the wort, let it sit, usually overnight, and this is before they boil it. And then they're going to come in the next day. That lactobacillus overnight is going to consume some of the sugars in that beer, create lactic acid, which is going to make it tart. And then the wort will be boiled to kill the lactobacillus that they inoculated into the wort, and the process goes on as normal. In this case, they added some raspberry puree here. The other way to do it is just not to boil the wort at all, and it turns out lactobacillus live on the husks of grain like those that we use to make beer. So if you don't boil the wort and just let it sit overnight, you should get some lactobacillus activity and some lactic acid production that way. Either way you do it, there are some other flavors that are created, and so this all leads me back around to a lot of the history that I read tells me that these beers, and I talked about saisons a couple of weeks ago and other types of beers, really belong in that kind of funky, weird beer category in a way. I would love to go back about 150, 60 years and drink some of these local beers. This is a Berliner Weiss, which means it was made chiefly around Berlin, or that's where it started. I would love to be able to go back to Berlin 150 years ago, and modern times notwithstanding, and be able to sample some of these. The reason this one uses raspberry, it's very traditional. The beer went through a lot of changes, actually fell off in popularity, and toward the sort of latter days of its popularity, if you will, in Germany, they were adding syrups at service, one of which was Schuss, or raspberry. And this was a very popular way to have it. You would be asked if you wanted your beer red or green, and that one is pretty red. It's really a pretty kind of a deep, almost purplish red color. So That's a little bit about Berliner Weiss and a little bit about trim tab. You might be asking, what's a trim tab? I had to learn it myself. Fortunately, their website explains it really well. So a trim tab is a little extension or a little tab on the end of a rudder, either on an airplane or on a ship, that actually, in and of itself, when it starts its little small movements left and right, will cause the entire rudder to come about and therefore the entire ship to come about. So it's a little tiny part of a larger aircraft or a larger ship that may move a little bit one way or the other and cause the entire thing to move. So it's a pretty cool concept, and it's a pretty cool name for a brewery, and certainly they're talking there, I think, about innovation and about being out on the edge, causing larger movements in the beer industry, if I can take some license and just assume what they're talking about. So that's what I've got for this week with this one. It's really nice. Again, Trim Tab Brewing Paradise Now, Raspberry Berliner Weiss. You can get it at 504 Craft Beer Lab, or I'm sure all over Alabama. They are in Birmingham. If you're ever up that way, you should stop in and check it out. I know I plan to. If you're watching me on Facebook, I would love it if you would invite your friends into the community and have them join the conversation over here. If you are watching me on YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to the channel, and maybe even turn on those notifications so you know when I post a new video. Either way, I hope you enjoyed yourselves this week, and I can't wait to see you right back here next time on Beer Bearings. Bye-bye.